Hi, it's Alex Cosper. Welcome to another SACTV.com studio chat. This is here at my recording studio, and it's still about Sacramento, but it's more about recording. I've been getting into music lately, exploring local music and indie music. I myself have been making music for my project Sunset Trip, and we'll get into that. How my focus is writing info songs. Info songs. That's something I made up, but they the concept has existed in the past, like educational songs. Music has more than one purpose. You know, it isn't just to entertain. It has the power to do so much more than that. It has power to feed your brain. That's how powerful music is. So that's why I want to keep getting deeper into music on this show, this podcast, that's mainly for Sacramento, about Sacramento. And not everything is going to be specifically about things going on in Sacramento, but almost everything I talk about on this podcast relates to Sacramento in some way. Like today, the topic is info tunes, and the topic of the song I want to focus on is propaganda, because propaganda is embedded in all kinds of media that we consume, especially news involving the U.S. government, whether it's national or international news. That usually is intertwined with propaganda. Propaganda simply means persuasive content. Doesn't have to be a lie. Everybody kind of starts to think that it just means a lie because that word's been thrown around so much in negative reviews of media, accusing one side or the other of slanting the news toward benefiting a political ideology or not. And I think it gets overblown because media inherently is propaganda to begin with, especially what funds media is advertising. So advertising is almost nothing but propaganda. And it's been going on. Big media advertising has been going on since the radio industry became big in the 1920s. The movie industry was also getting big around the 1920s, and they figured out how to market movies in several different ways. The most obvious way that people know about is putting them in theaters and then having people pay for movie tickets, and then whatever at the concession stands or whatever. At one time, movie studios were allowed to own movie theaters as well, so they were controlling a big part of the industry until finally the Justice Department broke that up. Um, and one of the guys who was involved in that big breakup was Howard Hughes, who was one of America's earliest billionaires. Like in the 60s, he was one of the few billionaires in America. But Howard Hughes made his fortune from the airline. Yeah, I guess you could say the airline industry. He was head of TWA, and he was also a defense contractor with the U.S. government, making fighter planes during as early as World War II. But he also was considered wasteful, and didn't deliver on what he promised for those contracts in the 1940s. But that was like one of his main things. The other main thing he did, Howard Hughes, he was a movie executive producer. He ran a movie company, and he eventually bought RKO Pictures in the 1940s and turned around and sold it in the 1950s without much output, without much profitable output. I think he did make a profit from selling the company, but he didn't make any blockbuster films. So he was involved in what I would consider movies, war, and propaganda. And that's the name of the song I wrote that I want to focus on as an info tune. Movies, War, and Propaganda is the song title. And it's about how all three things are intertwined during wartime. And during the the First World War is when this began, when President Wilson created an office for public information. He called it the Committee for Public Information, and that was run by a guy named George Creel, and his job was to promote World War I to the American people. And so his office had all kinds of media distribution. They had a newspaper, they had publications, they had a movie studio. So they made like 3 films back then in World War One that were designed to get people to appreciate World War One and to buy war bonds to help fund the war. But they realized that Hollywood, which was emerging in the early 1910s, like around 1911, that Hollywood was better at filmmaking. They just had better tools, and they were more suited and experienced in filmmaking for making propaganda films. So for World War II, you still had government films, government making war propaganda films, but a lot of commercial vendors, commercial movie studios also got into the act of making war propaganda films. So in 1940s, here's the Sacramento connection. Ronald Reagan was a movie star at that time, not yet governor of California, sitting at the Capitol in Sacramento, but that would be 1960s. But 20 years before that, he was just a movie star, and he played in the war propaganda film from 1943 called This Is the Army, and that was a musical comedy, and believe it or not, it became the highest grossing musical comedy film of all time at that time. And it was a war propaganda film to promote U.S. interests during World War II. There became, bigger musical films over time, but at that time that was it. And the money that was raised was donated to the Army for their relief fund. So that's where you had Hollywood and the government working together, which they've done since the 1940s. The Pentagon has been involved with hundreds of films. In fact, if they approve of a Hollywood film, they might help participate in it by providing the jet planes and all that stuff. Okay, this is all reality. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's documented by the Pentagon. Okay. Like the Pentagon provided the military aircraft for the film Top Gun in the 1980s, and that was a film that got people interested in war again, because for so long the Vietnam War was unpopular and the concept of war was unpopular, and the U.S. needed to change the political climate about war, because they they had things to accomplish in the military, and they got a lot done in the 80s without actually declaring any real wars on people, on other countries, but they still invaded countries and took their resources. So that's the reason why propaganda is important during wartime, is to get people, cheering on the war instead of protesting it, because when you protest it, you get stuff like Vietnam, where you got a very unpopular war, and half the people are, thinking the government's corrupt, and that's not good for the government. So one way they can get involved is making movies or partnering with Hollywood films. So in the 40s, not only was This Is the Army a popular war propaganda film, but there were several others. There was even First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt in 1942 made a film in which she narrated the film. It was called Training Women for War Production. And of course, it had that female empowerment view to it, getting women excited about war. 1944, a couple other big war propaganda films made by Hollywood were Since You Went Away. It's about a mother with two daughters, and they worry about their the husband and father who has volunteered in World War II, so he's serving in the military, and he eventually, I guess, comes home a hero. But the whole point of that movie is to promote sacrifices during wartime, to make it acceptable. And then there was another film in 1944 called 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. It uses actual war footage. It was the response, the U.S. response to the Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. And so they used footage from 1942 from an actual U.S. bombing Japan. So that's how the war machine has been commercialized with Hollywood, and they work together at creating war propaganda films. So I want you to hear my song now. It's called Movies, War, and Propaganda. And just keep in mind that that the point of the song is that war is promoted through movies. That's one way they get everyone on board for it, to support it. And at the same time, movies are a pastime that survived during the Great Depression, that people are never going to give up. So they know that people are committed to movies, and through movies you can actually sell stuff. Okay, and it's sneaky, but they call it product placement. And through movies you can get themes and products promoted by big entities that actually pay the movie companies for their product placement. So here's a song I wrote, and it contains info pertaining to how propaganda is intertwined with movies. The song is called Movies, War, and Propaganda.
Movies, war, and propaganda. Movies, war, and propaganda. It's part of the pop culture recipe to reach for power, aim for victory. Culture driven by movies. You can sell war with movies. The message must be clear. Try to make people cry a tear. For movies, war, and propaganda. Movies, war, and propaganda. It's part of the pop culture recipe to reach for power, aim for victory. Movies market we learned it in World Wars One and Two. Movies, war, and propaganda. Movies, war, and propaganda. It's part of the pop culture recipe to reach for power, aim for victory. Movies, war, and propaganda. Movies, war, and propaganda.